Welcome into our Crimes and Investigation Watchers. We are essentially going to give an update here on the latest that's happening in the Ukraine. Probably the best news that I have read so far on this is a statement made by Biden, President Biden, United States President, and addressed the world just a few moments ago. And he, when these war games go on, it's all about strategy, not saying too much, but not saying too little. So I think it's evident now, based on Biden's statement, where the U.S. is going to fall as far as forces, what the strategy is going to be here. Biden has said that our American United States forces will not be engaged in this conflict between Russia and the Ukraine, that U.S. forces will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power. In other words, don't try to come into Europe, Putin. You want to take Ukraine, then you take Ukraine, but don't you dare try to push further into Europe. And that's very important, because if you're familiar with history, knowledgeable about history, then you're familiar that World War II was all about almost the same sort of playbook here. Many have likened the moves that Putin has made to the moves that Hitler made back in World War II. When he tried to commandeer many close states, he invaded states right next to him, imprisoned Jewish people, murdered over 6 million Jewish people in the Holocaust. They were murdered in internment camps, gassed to death. That tragedy in the world has still not, we still have generations that are still absolutely alive and still remembers World War II like yesterday. Hello, Ming. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're well. So right now, I think we're getting a bit of probably the most clearest picture and understanding of what the United States strategy is going to be here, which is to defend NATO countries. If we look at a map on what the USSR used to be, which is really what this is all about, okay, and you'll get an understanding of what Putin would love to see if possible. This is what he wants. He wants to reunite these. There's several different individual countries that used to be part of the USSR, the Soviet Republic. For those of you that may have been born back in the 70s, 80s, you're very familiar with the USSR, because when you came out on this earth, the USSR was what we call today Russia, although had lost some of its land mass. He wants to regain this land mass, and he has invaded Ukraine by land, sea, and air. I hear that soldiers are pouring over the northern flank, over the Belarus border quite freely. We've seen him recognize the sovereignty of the DPR and the LPR. Again, that's a temporary measure. He recognized them so he could get in, use their land to get closer to the capital of Ukraine, which is Kyiv. Russian troops are currently outside of Kyiv. My understanding is they're moving on in. Without a strong, swift Ukrainian military response, I fully expect that Russia, sans Putin, will absolutely take the capital of Ukraine. It is said that he wants to decapitate the government that is currently in place in Ukraine, meaning what is going to happen to Zelensky, the current president, and the current government workers in Ukraine, ambassador, other high-ranking officials. It's going to be it's going to be in their best interest to essentially protect themselves and their families. I hope that many of those people are getting their families out of there. There is discussion of a list that is floating around United States has had pretty good intelligence on this whole situation, to be honest with you. But there is a list that has been developed, and on this list is the names of people and their family members who Russia feels is so-called an op, right? And my understanding is that the names on this particular list, the potential punishment is death or being sent to a so-called internment camp. These are things that we've seen in World War II. We know what happened to the people that went to those camps. So I wanted to provide an update on this. And this really quick, I just want to look at a map of what used to be the USSR, so that people can get a pretty good understanding of really what Vladimir Putin's goal really is. Now, if he's playing chess and he's doing this like a deliberate, tactful leader would do, he's going to continue to bluff people out. He's going to, I mean, he really bluffed a lot of people, didn't he? I mean, just yesterday he was on television delivering an address to the world saying that he had no intentions of doing anything crazy or drastic, but he really kept that door open, didn't he? He bluffed the hell out of people. He didn't want people to know that this was going to kick off overnight, but it did. Now, if you look at what was the former USSR, there are 15, I'm sorry. There are 15 countries that used to be part of the USSR that are no longer part of the USSR that are potentially in danger here if Putin really wants to reinvigorate the USSR. Hey, Astro Kid. So you've got Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. These are countries that are now running independent governments. They're running their own governments and are in danger of being invaded, which is why Putin was so diligent about the Ukraine not joining NATO, because he knows that if the Ukraine would have joined NATO, then by the rules of NATO, he may have been faced with a pretty strong military response. But the Ukraine did not officially join NATO all the way. And that is why, another reason why he's making the move he's making. What's very interesting about the Russia military and the Russian leader is they will absolutely use people's own laws against them. Basically saying things like, well, according to this act, according to the United Nations Act of 1900, we can do this, this, and that. It is all war game tactics. And the concern here, more than anything, is will Putin continue to push forward? Will he continue to push forward past the borders of Ukraine? Remember that he annexed Crimea. Crimea was also a part of Ukraine back in 2014 when he annexed Crimea and absorbed it. Crimea then became part of the Russian Federation. So we had Hitler, now we got Putin. He has absolutely escalated this to a whole nother level. And he will forever be looked at as Hitler-esque, Stalin-esque. Not quite dictator, but yes, quite dictator. So again, there is 16 additional countries that could potentially be up for so-called grabs by the Russians. And that is the fear. Will he take Ukraine? I think many people think he will. think many people expect him to take Ukraine, and he knows that with taking that capital, that is it's all downhill from there. So that's what we're looking at really is will he push past Ukraine into the bowels of these other countries? They are much, much smaller than the Ukraine, much smaller, and could potentially be taken over and invaded just like he's done in Crimea and now in Western Ukraine. So we are over on we're over on Twitter, everybody streaming. I'm really starting to really develop my Twitter streams. Shout out to all the people that are over there in Twitter land. I am also live on Facebook. I will just be coming live on and off in the day on YouTube. But a lot of the images and things that we're seeing would not be allowed on YouTube. So, Miss B, feel free to rewind back, I'd say about 15 minutes, and you will get the latest update. So everybody keep your eyes on the map, the former USSR. Just know in the back of your minds, this is what Putin wants to attain. By moving into the Ukraine, he just grabbed a huge landmass. He puts himself next to damn near every other country that used to be part of the USSR. And the fears are that he will continue to push and continue to push until he gets this eventual mass. And you got to understand how scary that is, because what if he does take these other 16 countries and incorporates them back into the Russian Federation? Will it become a one world leader? Will it become a one world order? We'll be back later, guys.